Welcome again to the Race Academy webinar series, episode 22. Time is flying and we're seeing such a great success in these webinars. A lot of people asking questions and topics coming through the roof. So today we have our most sought after topic to date, additive technology in digital dentistry. There's no doubt this topic has been the most sought after and the most requested one and highly awaited for and anticipated topic thus far. So we've reached out to our global partners and we've reached out to the world's #1 partner, Carbon Dental or Carbon 3D printers. And we're lucky enough to secure today the Senior Manager of Dental Labs globally, Jamie Stover. Jamie has a wealth of knowledge, and anyone that has seen our 3D printing capabilities and what Carbon has brought to this company has been phenomenal. Carbon, of course, has been supporting companies across the globe like NASA, Additive, Rydell, Ford, Lamborghini, and Race Dental. So we're in great hands with great technology. And I do ask you all to hold your questions. Feel free to put them in. They'll launch up on my screen. And as usual, we'll ask those questions at the end to Jamie. And if I do welcome across the globe, we've got people from all through Asia Pacific, North America, Canada, and India, as well as Australia and New Zealand, of course. So with no further delay, Jamie, I'll hand it across to you. Welcome.
Thank you, Matt, very much. Appreciate it. Hi, everybody. Excited to be here. Coming to you. You probably realize I don't have an Australian accent. I don't have a cool, my accent doesn't sound as cool as Matt's. I have this West Coast, United States West Coast accent. This is so interesting because we're here to talk about technology tonight. And it's tonight for me because it's about 8 o'clock at night, Monday night. And so it's only because of technology that we're able to do this and be together. And, you know, we take that for granted sometimes today. And, you know, what we also take for granted is the fact that technology has really evolved our industry and it continues to at a rapid pace. You know, what we take for granted is that over a decade ago now, the fixed side of the industry, you know, the crown and bridge side of the industry really was making its transition from the analog processes that you see on the screen there for making PFMs, waxing them up, casting them, transitioning to, you know, milling zirconia, milling Emax and other materials that we have available to us today. And the removable side of the industry is now really starting to make some big strides and moving to digital technology because mostly of material development and hardware and software developments that have come to be in the last few years. So that's what we're going to really focus on here today for you. Let's look at some quick industry trends. These are U.S. industry trends, courtesy of the American College of Prosthodontists. You don't have to live in the U.S. to be a member of this organization. There's worldwide members. But what they're telling us here is basically what we already know. And these numbers correlate around the world with our partners in Europe and, you know, in Australia and everywhere, that there's a lot of patients that are edentulous or partially edentulous. Here's some stats on the U.S. About 36 million Americans are edentulous. Another 120 million are partially edentulous. Expected to get to about 200 million partially edentulous people in the next 10, 15 years. And here's really the focus, and here's where we live every day, clinicians and labs that serve clinicians and patients. 15% of the edentulous population has dentures made each year. So if you do the math on the US, that's 5,400,000 denture prescriptions coming our way to labs in the US this year. That's a crushing amount of work that's only going to increase. How are dentures made today? Well, we're here to talk about Lucitone Digital Print, specifically 3D printed dentures. But let's calibrate on a few other ways that dentures are made. We have the traditional method that's been around for, 100 years, it feels like, maybe longer, but the same basic process. It's you wax it up, you invest that wax up in a flask, you boil it out, you pack some acrylic, you know, you then process the acrylic, and we know all the steps that are involved in that. When production processes move digital, oftentimes they'll start with milling, and we've seen that with 3D printed and 3D milled dentures. And, you know, so 3D milled dentures have been around for, a while now. You know, there's companies like Avident have been around for a while. You've heard of them. Ivoclar's got a 3D milled denture, digital denture. And the thing about any production process, when you move it to milling or reductive technology, is it's inherently a wasteful process and kind of inefficient because you're starting with a large mass of material, cutting out just the pieces you need. Most of the rest gets thrown away. Some gets recycled. And actually in the lab, it's also for, lab and clinic workflow back and forth, it can be kind of inefficient because it takes labs quite a long time to mill a denture in a mill. You have to slow the spindle speed way down or you'll melt the material. So it's just, although it does produce a decent denture digitally, it's not a real efficient process production wise. And it's also very important to calibrate on the different denture materials on the market today, because the vast majority of those materials are in fact what I refer to as the generation 1 3D printed denture materials that have been around for 5-6 years. And these materials are vastly inferior to the Lucitone Digital Print product because they're not a high impact strength, and they're also very brittle. And so they're okay for temporary, for immediate dentures, but for a long-term solution, a very strong solution, especially one to compare to a traditional acrylic denture in strength and durability, they are not. And in fact, we've seen a lot of times these materials are so brittle that they'll shatter. And if you drop them from 6 feet onto a floor, they'll shatter into pieces. And so, they were proof of concept, and they're still viable in some applications, but the world really changed almost 4 years ago now when Dentsply, in partnership with Carbon, the company that I work for, brought Lucitone Digital Print dentures to the market. And how did it change? Well, here's the high level benefits that we've seen so far. Number one thing is, it's interesting. Sometimes I'll talk to clinicians. My older brother's a prosthodontist, and you talk about these different processes and techniques, and he'll say things like, Jamie, I'd love to do digital dentures. And when I get an intraoral scanner and I'm a digital doctor, I'll do digital dentures. And I'll say, no, Rob, that's not the way it works. This is a digital production process in the lab. We're using our expertise in this digital design technology, and we're using our investment that we made in this amazing equipment, and we're leveraging that to provide these amazing, prosthesis for labs, or for dentists and for clinicians. So you don't have to change what you're doing. If you have an intraoral scanner, there's some pretty cool benefits and some pretty cool shortcut workflows I'm going to show you towards the back half of this presentation. But the vast majority of these that are being done in the world today are still being done with traditional impressions and traditional bites. So if you are a dentist who doesn't have an intraoral scanner, you'd like to try one of these dentures from Race, it's not a problem. They can work with you that way. These are double the work of fracture rating for strength when they're in the mouth compared to traditional Lucitone 199. Traditional Lucitone 199 is about 1,500 joules per meter squared when it's at room temperature. That's pretty strong. But a side effect that Dentsply didn't actually plan on, but it was a pretty significant side effect when they converted traditional Lucitone 199 to this 3D printed resin, their heat is a factor there. And so when they were doing their testing, they realized that when you warm it up to body temperature, the work of fracture rating doubled to 3,000 joules per meter squared. It's incredibly strong. If you look online, you'll see all kinds of videos of people running these over with trucks, dropping them out of 5-story buildings. They're just rock solid and so durable. Patients and dentists report an improved fit. We see this time and time again here in the States. This has been out now for years. We have, almost 4 years track record of labs working with this. And what we're seeing some labs do now in the design process, and believe it or not, this might sound, abnormal or maybe slightly crazy, but they're actually designing these dentures without a post dam. And they're finding that the suction is so good and the fit is so good with these dentures, they don't need to design a post dam in, which is unheard of when you're talking about traditional acrylic dentures. Digital record, another huge benefit. So a traditional acrylic denture probably takes 5 appointments if you're lucky. There might be additional adjustment appointments, but let's just say 5 appointments from the initial impression to final delivery. And that's a lot, right, for the patient and the clinician. But then how often have you had a patient lose a denture or damage a denture? Sometimes they wrap it up in a napkin, they throw it away with dinner. Sometimes a dog eats it. You're starting all the way back over from that first appointment. You're going to go through 4 or 5 more appointments to get a new denture made. That's all over with now. Once this denture is fabricated, Race stores this design file. They store it in their archives. And if something happens to that denture, you call them, they pull up that design, they refabricate the denture and send it to you in a matter of days. So we're talking about that's a game changer right there, especially if you have elderly patients that have some disabilities. Those are the ones that oftentimes will lose or damage their dentures. And then we know their health declines very rapidly when that happens. And so for those patients in particular, it's really nice Some of them require special care to get back and forth to your office, special medication for those appointments. So start to think about in terms of this new technology, how that can be a benefit. And I'm sure it doesn't take you long to think how it could. Dentures in as few as 2 to 3 clinical appointments. That's a workflow we're going to look at. It's commonly referred to as the copy or reference denture workflow when you're using a patient's existing denture as a starting point. I'll show you that in a little bit here. And importantly, conservatively, just from my company, from the data that we have from customers that have and use our printers, there's well over 100,000 of these Lucitone Digital Print dentures in the mouth. We talked about an adoption curve, right? You don't want to really always be an early adopter. You might want to wait. I don't want to be a guinea pig. I want to wait until other people have kind of worked out the bugs. We are almost 4 years on the other side of that adoption curve. We are on the other side of the guinea pig adoption curve at this point. Well tested, well known, and very, very reliable. Let's take a look at some stats here. Here's a quick strength stat from Dentsply themselves. Again, Dentsply, Sorona, the manufacturer of this resin. So you can see that it has very comparable flexural strength and work of fracture to traditional Lucitone 199 when it's at room temperature. But the magic happens when you warm that up to body temperature. As you can see on this graph, shows over 3,000 joules per meter squared for the work of fracture rating when at body temperature. So again, incredibly strong. And we see this material growing in digital denture adoption for our customers in the States and also in Europe now. We're really starting, specifically, interesting enough, I'll share this with you if it is interesting to you, in the UK. Digital dentures, specifically with Lucitone Digital Print, are really, really growing in the UK. So year-over-year customer data, 175% increase in resin usage for this application. So it's really taking off. Labs are telling me last couple of years, what I do every day is help labs launch this application and communicate to their dentists and so on. And what labs are telling me now is that dentists are coming to them asking for it, which is a real shift in the tides. I'm going to talk a little bit about historically how this product was, what it was, and then how it's changed very recently here. So historically, this product launched with a very special carded tooth. You would print the base, and this was almost 4 years ago again. You would 3D print the base, and then you would use a very specific digital carded tooth that the libraries of that tooth, the geometries were known in the software. So when you design the denture, there was a fixed geometry. You don't grind on the tooth. You don't just grab any old carded tooth and throw it in the base. It doesn't work that way. And that's how the workflow was. And it was great. It was very innovative, but it was also kind of limiting because you needed a certain amount of VDO to work with those carded teeth. And what Dentsply did over time is they realized, hey, labs want to be able to 3D print everything. And so they developed 3D printed resins for the teeth. And September of last year, they launched a value printed denture tooth. It comes in like 7 Vita shades. The durability is 3 to 5 years. It's on par with an economy carded denture tooth, aesthetics wise and durability wise. And they also launched the ability to mill PMMA out of a puck and bond that, fuse that into the denture base, which that blew the doors wide open, as they say, because then pretty much any case that comes in the door, no matter if the patient has a collapsed VDO or more vertical space, you can have a tooth option and a workflow option. They're launching actually this week. There's about 20 labs in the US that are now using the IPN premium printed denture tooth. It's available in 16 Vita shades plus 2 bleach shades. Next month, half the shades get released worldwide to labs, and then the next month, the rest of the shades do. So that's what's new with this workflow and how it's evolved and changed over time. Here's a picture of that premium, or the value printed denture tooth. And you can see, again, aesthetics on par with an economy carded tooth, durability about the same as well. Different options for different tiers. And that's what Race is really the experts there of guiding you on which denture tooth you should use. And we can talk about that in the Q&A if you want. Here's what the premium denture tooth looks like. Really nice. You can see that tooth right there has not been adjusted. Those teeth haven't been adjusted or ground on with a burr. That anatomy is determined and built into the design software. Those tooth libraries that Race has access to from Dentsply have really beautiful anatomy. We're going to take a look at the workflow here, just kind of walk through it so that you understand high level how we put these things together. It's a nice shot of sped up, of course, but that's a nice shot of some denture bases coming out of a printer, just like Race has. So again, we will talk about some really slick techniques if you happen to be, and I'm just interested if everybody would. I can't see the chat right now. Matt can, and the rest of my buddies at Race can probably see this, but just throw in the chat if you're a doctor with an intraoral scanner. That'd be awesome to see. Throw it in there if you've got an intraoral scanner. Just say, yes, I do, or however you want to indicate that you do. But, you know, if you don't have an intraoral scanner, you're going to send traditional bite records, and Race is going to scan those in with the scanner that you see there on the right-hand side of your screen, something similar to that. They're going to digitize those files, pull them into design software. I'll show you in a minute. And basically, this is where the workflow diverts from the analog workflow. If you have wax rims, bite blocks, you can get the bite, the VDO, the midline, everything established just like you would. And then they're not going to take that though and then wax on that and put teeth on that and send you a wax try-in. That's where we go this way. We're going to scan that into a lab scanner. We're going to take those exact records just how they are in the analog world. We're going to virtually articulate them. We're going to set them up with software, this very special software, and we're going to design the denture. But first, we're going to design a try-in. So a lot of dentists, they can sometimes be fearful of this and think that there's a lack of control clinically, right? Well, geez, I'm used to getting this wax try-in, and what is the try-in process? How do I have a chance to make changes before this goes to the final? And number one, what I'll say is that the whole purpose of the wax try-in is to get things established before the final denture shows up. And what we found with this digital process is that it's so much more clean and so much more efficient and so much more accurate that a lot of labs are deciding with their clinicians after getting involved in this workflow and getting experience that they don't even need to do a try-in, because the wax, the design, you can look at a design proposal and you can say, yeah, that looks about like what I'm looking for, or the experts at a lab like Race can design this with their experience. And what a lot of clinicians, let's put it this way, there's only so many times you're going to schedule an appointment for a try-in and you make no changes to the try-in until you're going to start going, why are we doing try-ins? And so believe it or not, again, we're 3-4 years into this over here in the States, and that's where things are at. So the design software is really intuitive and also really comprehensive. And this is what a monolithic try-in for Lucitone Digital Print looks like right here. So what happens is it's what we call a functional try-in. It's monolithic. It's the same base material as what the Lucitone Digital Print pink base is. It's just in a monolithic light color, like a tooth shade. And I'll show you why it's a tooth shade in a minute. But it's a functional try-in. It's way stronger than a wax try-in. In fact, you can send it home with the patient if you'd like. You can never do that with a wax try-in. If you want, you could send, if you had a patient with really tough occlusion, again, my brother, the prosthodontist, he deals with only patients with very tough occlusion. And this is a huge benefit because you can send the patient home with the try-in. They can wear it for a couple of days. They can actually eat with it. They can talk with it. They can test their phonetics. They can see how it feels and fits. And then they can come back and you can still request changes at that point. So I'll show you that in just a sec. Really easy to indicate changes on it. You have all the same amount of control and that you would with a wax try-in, except you don't have to sit there manually and pull the teeth out of the wax or try to take your waxer and, you know, mess with it. There's none of that anymore. The other nice thing is that when you have this try-in, it is the same parent material as the finished Lucitone Digital Print denture. It has 3,000 joules per meter strength of work of fracture. So a lab, what Race can do is they can deliver that try-in along with the final denture as an emergency backup denture. So if you do have a patient that damages or loses their denture, they're not without teeth or the ability to eat or talk for the amount of time, the few days, whatever it takes Race to produce and deliver that second final denture from their digital record. So that's another really nice benefit that you can never get from a wax try-in. The wax try-in gets destroyed, right? It turns into the final denture. It can easily be customized to show contrast, which I'll show you in a sec here. If you want to make changes, you can grind on this. So just take an acrylic burr, adjust the occlusion. You can put wax on this. Wax will stick to it. Acrylic will actually stick to this. So if you wanted to add a little bit of acrylic and say, hey, bring the denture teeth down. We need the teeth to be this much longer. So just add a millimeter of acrylic or wax on there if you want to. take a little Sharpie and draw the midline. Say, ooh, midline's off a little bit. We need to move the midline over. You can take a new bite if you want to. If something got really goofed up, you could do a wash impression in this. If somehow the tissue didn't get captured, that's extremely rare, but let's just say something crazy happened. I mean, there's lots of ways that you can communicate changes or desired changes. What the lab's going to do then is they're going to take this, try in any requested changes. If you did grind on the occlusion, if you take a new bite, they're going to scan that back in and overlay it with that original design, make those changes and produce the final denture. If you want to lay some pink denture wax on there, if you want to lay some pink acrylic on there to show the contrast, super simple to do. I haven't waxed for years. I used to think I was I didn't used to think I was. I knew I was a good waxer back in the day. I'm a CDT in Crown and Bridge. So that's all we did. That's all we did is wax stuff, invest it, get out torches. That's what we did. You know, we're not quite as smart as the removable technicians, but we had fun. But anyway, I hadn't waxed for a while. So I went to a lab. I sat there at the denture bench with some pink wax. And this took me maybe 10 minutes, 10 minutes. People at race that are watching this, the techs are probably laughing at me saying they could probably do it too, which they could. But the point is, it looks good. And when you imagine the lip line in there, you're not going to see that whitish color towards the upper part of the denture there. It's going to show patient's contrast. It's going to be look just like what you're used to seeing. So pretty simple. Let's continue to walk through the workflow. So after that try-in's done, the lab's going to print the denture. And there you see a really nice shot of our M2 printer. That's one of our printer models, kind of our middle-sized printer. They've got 5-6 denture bases on there. And what you see that the material above the arch of the denture there is the supporting material. And what that's doing is it's what we call nesting. It's helping to support that denture to the base. There's compression and suction forces during the printing process. So we want to make sure that these print accurately, that they fit. So that's what you see there. That's going to be removed. And then we're going to take the teeth and we're going to bond them into the base. So we're going to print the teeth, or if you use carded teeth, the special IPN carded teeth. And here's what that process looks like. It's important to note here that we're not taking super glue or Elmer's glue or whatever brand of glue you're familiar with and gluing these into the base. We have a partially cured denture base at this point, and that's why this technician's wearing gloves. We do a final cure in a minute. You have a partially cured denture tooth. You take some of the same resin, the same parent denture base resin, and you put it into the socket. And then you tack cure the tooth into the socket for 5 to 10 seconds so it doesn't move, and you continue around the arch. And this is what you can see here is we're putting this fuse material into the base, and then we're putting the tooth in, and then we're tack curing it. And then it's going to go into you continue around the arch until you get them all in there. And then what you're going to do is you're going to put it in a very special UV cure unit. Now, these UV lights are very specific for heat, and they're very specific for the UV frequency. You can't just put them in anything with UV. You can't throw them in a tanning bed or something. And so it's all chemistry, and it's all completely dialed in and tuned just for this material. And after they come out of this cure unit, they have reached their final strength, and you can handle them with your hands because they're not partially cured resin. They're completely FDA, TGA, Health Canada approved to be in a patient's mouth. So that's what that process looks like. You're going to cure them up, then you're going to polish them. The polishing steps are very similar to polishing a traditional acrylic denture. Nothing too crazy there. They're beautiful. They can also be customized if you want to at that point, but they come out really, really nice. That's a nice shot of a Lucitone Digital Print denture right there. So that's just kind of the high level workflow. I want to take a minute here before we move to Q&A. And I want to talk about the copy and reference denture workflow that I touched on. Now, again, you can do this workflow if you are not an intraoral scanning doctor, not a digital doctor. You can still participate in this workflow, but where it's really slick and really efficient, and that's where we get to the 2 and 3 appointment denture, is if you have an intraoral scanner. Let me walk you through it. You have a patient with an existing denture, and they're either happy with it, but maybe their bone has resorbed a little bit. They've lost some bone. Their tissue also has maybe collapsed a little. So maybe the denture doesn't fit as good as it used to, but overall they're happy with it. Occlusion's pretty good. Midline's right where they want it. Tooth shape's good. Maybe they smoke a little more than they tell you. Maybe they drink a little more red wine than they admit at their checkups, and they'd like a lighter shade. That's easy. Basically, what you're going to do, appointment number one, patient shows up. If you have an intraoral scanner, do a wash impression to capture the patient's tissue accurately. And then you're basically going to scan that denture. You're going to put it in and scan the bite and scan the opposing, and you're going to send that information to RACE. RACE is going to take that information into that design software that I showed you a few minutes ago, and they're going to basically make a copy in their design of that existing denture. They're not going to change the occlusion. They're not going to change the midline. They're going to copy that exact same tooth shape. If you want a different shade, they're going to note that for you, and they're going to print those teeth in a lighter shade. And they have the tissue captured from your wash impression. Appointment number two. So still appointment number one. Let's back up for a second. Patient's still there. You're still there with the patient. Remove the wash impression, put the denture back in the patient's mouth, and they wear their existing denture home as the try-in, or as the temporary, you could say. So they show up with their teeth. They leave that appointment with teeth. Appointment number two, RACE sends the try-in to you. You try it in. Again, remember a few slides back, if you needed to make any changes, you can note that. I'll tell you on the copy and reference denture workflow, there is very, very few changes. And that's where we're getting to the 2-appointment denture, because that's where clinicians are starting to ask their labs, hey, we've done 15, 20 of these copy dentures. We haven't made one change to a denture at the try-in. Can we skip the try-in? And the labs are like, yes, we can skip the try-in. And that's where in the States here, we're getting to 2-appointment dentures with the copy denture workflow. And I think you can see how that would go. So, but if you wanted to do a try-in, still do a try-in, that's appointment number two. And then appointment number three, RACE would send you the final denture based on whatever happened at that try-in appointment. So that's the copy denture. If you don't have an intraoral scanner and you want to participate in that workflow, it's a little different, still pretty efficient. One difference is that RACE is going to have to scan that denture. And so, because if you don't have an intraoral scanner to scan that and send them the file, so you're going to have to take a wash impression, send that to RACE. They're going to do the scanning. They're going to send the denture back to you. You can remove the wash impression, give it back to the patient. So one more little step in there, way slicker, way slicker, a lot more efficient with a intraoral scanner. If you have a reference denture, that's a little different than a copy denture. That's when you actually want some changes made. So you're still starting with their existing denture. And if you think about it, you're skipping ahead in the process. It's like you treat their existing denture like a wax rim or a bite block with teeth. You know, it's a verified, you've got the tissue captured with the wash impression. You've got everything set and established with the occlusion of midline. It's all done. And so you're just skipping those preliminary steps. And I don't know about exactly the data from Australia, but I know in the States, something I saw the other day, it was near 85% of new denture patients are existing denture patients. They're getting their second set or their lower set or a new set. So most of these denture patients have existing dentures, and we can use those now with this workflow. Reference denture candidate, maybe they don't have quite as good retention. Maybe the occlusion is worn down, not quite as good of occlusion as a copy denture patient. Phonetics are still good. Maybe they don't have, maybe they like some corrections there. Maybe they feel like you can improve that. BDO, pretty good, but the patient would like some changes. They're unhappy with something about their denture. So same basic workflow. You're going to do a wash impression, scan that, bite, opposing, scan that all, send it to RACE. And then you're going to send a prescription along with what changes you'd like made, and RACE is going to reflect those in the design. So they're going to make those changes, send you a try-in. I will say, copy denture workflow, pretty common to have the 2-appointment denture. Reference denture workflow, pretty common to have a 3-appointment, because you are requesting changes. So that try-in is a good stopping point, a good assessment point to say, are we capturing these changes we want accurately, and are we good to go to the final denture? So really, this is really the simplest way to experience the benefits of this. If you would like to try one of these, and you can start thinking now like, oh yeah, I've got the perfect patient, or oh God, I just did one of these yesterday. That would have been perfect. So start thinking about the patients that you have that would fit in this copy and reference denture workflow, especially for you intraoral scanning doctors, and give RACE a call and chat with them and see for yourself the results. It's pretty impressive. We're going to get ready to move to the Q&A here. I love to touch on this quote from Henry Ford. There's a good reason for it. Number one, I love what he says. And we know this is true in our personal lives and our professional lives. If we just continue to do what we've always done, the same results, right? And I love that he said this so many years ago about running his company and all the innovations that he brought to the automotive industry. And what's interesting is today, Ford Motor Companies was the first automotive manufacturer in the world to put 3D printed parts on production vehicles. And they did it with a carbon printer, the same exact printer technology that Race has. So like Matt touched on, this printing technology is disrupting manufacturing all over the world. We could have a whole webinar like 3 times longer than this just to go through other industries that are doing these things. But if you haven't seen the evolution of an analog dental lab technician, this is really going to impact you. Hopefully not too negatively. Here's what we look like first day in the lab. Here's about 15 years later, and here's 30 years later. This is what happens. This is the stress when we are breathing and absorbing monomer and polymer for 30 years. This is just the natural progression of things. But there's some preliminary data I want to share with you. I'm not quite ready to publish this yet. There's early indications that because of digital dentures, there may be some hope. We may be able to reverse this aging process. Here's what I'm projecting it could look like. Analog dentures and splints, milled dentures and splints, and 3D printed dentures and splints. Please do your part to help us dental lab techs age in reverse. Matt, are you ready to, Matt, you look great. I don't think that you should do digital dentures, but that's just me.
Yeah, Jamie, after 30 years in the lab myself, I thought that was a picture of myself, not Jack Nichols, but I appreciate you looking after us, mate. Look, we've got a number of questions coming in, but before I go there, look, we've got a number of printers in the lab. As you know, we've got Form Labs, a Sega, EOS, 3D Systems, a number of different printers. Some are good, some are great. Before I get into the questions here, Jamie, give us a bit of in your opinion, why do the world's best companies, including ours, choose your printer?
Great question. Our technology differs from, that's a whole nother webinar, 3D printing technology. But in a nutshell, the co-founders of our company did some pretty amazing things when they developed our printing technology. They realized that the way UV light partially cures resin to the glass in a 3D printer, if they built special glass that was oxygen permeable and they pumped oxygen up through that glass, the resin wouldn't be able to partially cure to that glass. And so as the parts being created, new resin can continuously flow underneath. We can print faster, very accurate, and we can print some pretty intricate parts like the lattice that you see on the screen here. This is from some other part from another industry, but we can print complex structures, complex parts. So that's why companies like Dentsply, when they wanted to bring this product to the market, they wanted to hit certain material properties and certain characteristics. They realized that they needed a machine like ours to be able to do that. So that's in a nutshell how it works. Also, I will say this is pretty interesting. Our co-CEO right now, and he's our founding VP of engineering. His name's Craig Carlson. He came from Tesla. And so what he worked on was bringing the Roadster and the Model S to the market. And his big focus at Tesla was over-the-air software updates. And apparently what he says is that was very hard to do with a car. And the first thing he said when he came to Carbon is this printer is going to have over-the-air software updates. And it does. So it's a connected device. It's smart hardware. It's constantly being monitored and updated over the air. It's like a Tesla. Basically, it's like a Tesla for your lab. That's what I would say. So.
Yeah, and I know there's a whole new webinar on that, but I just wanted your précis on that. Jamie, look out, and for those reasons, the Race Dental's Clinical Advisory Board, as well as our research and development team, have had nothing but a pleasure dealing with your products. For fit, predominantly, the fit has been far superior with everything we do with your products. But with lack of time, I'm going to jump straight into the questions. Jamie, this is coming. This is a very exciting product and one I wish to use in my practice here in Melbourne, Australia. Does it have all the relevant approvals down here as in TGA?
It absolutely does. Yep, TGA approved. I know you're not asking about the FDA here in the States, but of course it's FDA approved. It's approved in Canada, in Europe. So yes, yep, it's cleared for use.
Yeah, appreciate that. And as the people bring it in here at Race Dental, we can fully confirm that, Jamie. So rest assured, for everyone down there in Melbourne and the rest of Australia and New Zealand, it is fully compliant here for use. Another question here, you mentioned there are over hundreds of thousands of LDP dentures in the mouth globally. Where have most of these been done?
The vast majority of these have been done in the United States. And I don't know why that is. We're seeing I think I mentioned earlier, I think we're seeing quite a big adoption curve now happening in Europe, specifically in the UK. But the United States, just for whatever reason, jumped on digital dentures a little bit earlier. Maybe digital technology wise, we're a little bit more, slightly more aggressive. I'm not 100% sure, but it also launched in the US. It's been available in the US, like I've said a couple of times now, for almost 4 years. So it has been available to US labs for a while. So the vast majority of those are in the United States, I would say.
That's great. Look, and Race Dental, we've been printing for nearly 19 years. So rest assured, 3D printing is not the future. It really is now. And with companies like yourself, we definitely see that it's the latest and greatest. Jamie, I have a question here. I think it was answered. It was asked prior to you covering it, but I'll just touch on it again. I have a Trios scanner. Do you recommend I use a contrast spray, and how necessary is it in a reline impression?
Yeah, it's a good idea. That's a great question. Trios, great scanner, and it is a little bit of spray is a good idea. Scanners, intraoral scanners don't like real shiny things, so we want to make it's just like when you're scanning teeth. You're getting the environment really dry. You don't want a bunch of saliva all over the tooth surface and the prep surface. You want to get it real clean and dry. Same thing with a denture, just a nice little light coating of powder. And I think you even saw probably on that picture that I showed, you could tell that denture had been powdered a little bit or sprayed a little bit with some scan spray. So yes, we want to be able to spray the shiny surfaces of the denture to capture the tissue. For the wash impression, I think they're spraying those a little bit as well, just to make sure that we get an even coverage and real good reflectiveness.
Okay, so you're scanning the denture, the pickup impression, and the denture all in one. We've got a bit of confusion here, so I just want to recap for Dr. Pham, the inside intaglio surface of the reline pickup impression, as well as all the cameo surface of the palate and teeth. And someone else here has asked a question: can he recommend a spray that they should be using?
I would defer to I'd probably defer to you, Matt, and your team there. You guys probably have some good ideas for what works well for you. I'm not sure. We'd have to get into I want to make sure that I'd be recommending something that's obviously, sometimes what you use to scan or to spray in the lab may be different than what you use intraorally if it's going to be involved in a patient's mouth. So I would defer that to probably after the lab.
Look, I know Sirona do a good one, as do 3MSB. But what I'll do for the listeners, we'll have the recording of this up and running in the next couple of days on the Race Academy website under education. I'll add that to the recording at that point in your lecture and just put it down the bottom, our recommendations of a couple of places that sell that, Jamie. So rest assured we can have that sorted. And the one last question, we're short a bit of time here, Jamie, so I'm just going to finish up on this one because I think it's a cracker. It's probably not for you, more so for us. I have a full upper patient this afternoon. Can I scan their denture and send it today? I don't think it's for you. I'm going to throw that over to Ian McFarlane, who is spearheading the LDP project down here in Australia and New Zealand. I'm getting the thumbs up and the big nod, so by all means start scanning. We look forward to, and it's probably the best way to start those full upper cases that your patient wants a new version of what they've had because of attrition, wear, tear, or depreciation or deterioration over time. So by all means, get on board and get started. I'm getting the all clear here. But Jamie, before you go, I want to throw you under a bus. I hope you don't mind. Would you give us one last thing I know that you pushed home that they fit much better, and I know that their aesthetics are as good, and I know that they're a stronger product. So I've extracted every answer from you. Can you give us another reason why you believe 3D printed dentures are the way forward?
I believe that the efficiencies between, we've talked about fit, we've talked about strength and aesthetics, and I guess the other thing that we have talked about, but we could just added to the list here is just the efficiency, the fact that you can save chair time, and the workflow between lab and clinic can be streamlined and more efficient. And today, more than ever, that's just so critical. So I think that the efficiencies that you pick up in the office and the savings of chair time, if you really do the math on calculating what those are, it's going to add up really quickly to some pretty significant savings, and also just a smoother workflow, less stress in the office. So I didn't put the picture up, the evolution of a dentist. No, I think it's just the way the world is going. You can see additive technology just brings so much efficiency to productivity, to production, different industries. And I think now we're reaping those benefits here in our dental space finally. So
yeah, look, I love that. A decreased chair time and decreased visits. I mean, ultimately patient comfort and wow factor. And I guess less visits means more patients, so it's better for everyone, mate. I do appreciate you coming on board. I appreciate it's late for you in the evening, and you're spending your time teaching us down under and on this Antipodean side of the world. So look, I appreciate it, Jamie. Don't forget to all the listeners, this has been recorded and will be up and running on the website under Race Academy Education section. Jamie, thank you very much once again for your time. I thank everyone over at Carbon for setting us all up. I do thank Ian McFarlane for spearheading this project and getting it up and running and commercialised. We're now live in Australia to start manufacturing, so by all means, please start ordering. We're looking forward to hearing some positive feedback. So again, thank you all for being with us. I look forward to the next Race Academy episode, number 22. And Jamie, I hope we can get you back on when all this is up and running for an advanced session.
That sounds amazing. I'll come back anytime. Love working with you guys. Really appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Ian, the whole entire team. And thanks all the attendees. Have a great rest of your day.
All righty. I appreciate it all. Thank you all. See you next time. Thanks for coming.
Okay.
Be safe.
Bye.